Genesis chapter 38. Joseph is an individual, you could say he's a colorful character by the coat he wears. Favored among his brothers, his father likes him better than anybody else. His father has children through several different women, a couple different wives. He has a favorite wife and a favorite son of the favorite wife, and that's Joseph. You've probably read the story and may have heard it several times. A couple things you might not have thought about. Joseph, when he gets sold by his brothers out of envy down into Egypt, have you ever stopped to think that as Joseph is headed off, being probably drug along the way, tied up, I don't know how, maybe in a cart and inside some cage, but he's going off and he's thinking in his mind, wait till Dad finds out. He's the favorite son. And he's going to make these guys come out and come get me and apologize. Surely. And it never happens. The whole time that Joseph is down in Egypt, day after day, he's thinking, Dad is not going to ever give up looking for me. I'm the favorite son. And they never came. No one ever came searching for him the whole time. Now, remembering the story, eventually because of a famine, Joseph's brothers have to come down to Egypt searching for food. By this time, Joseph now is in charge of everything in Egypt except for Pharaoh himself. And they present themselves before Joseph, not recognizing him. He's speaking through an interpreter, probably dressed a whole lot more like an Egyptian, if you ever have seen some of these pictures where they're painted up with lots of heavy mascara or whatever. And so they don't know him. It's been 20 years. He's speaking a different language, but he recognizes his brothers real well. They're lined up in order, just like they've always been. You know how, if you ever watch the Three Stooges, you know how he just recognizes his brothers. They're just the rough and legged and whatever you want to call them. And so Joseph sees him coming in, and you remember the stories as it develops. He sends them away, but he's sitting there thinking, how come they don't come down looking for me? And then it dawns in the conversation that he has with them, and they're discussing among themselves, they've passed him off as being dead. So Joseph discovers at that point, that's why they never came looking for him. Now that's part of the story. Now, chapter 45, I find so extremely interesting. Because after Joseph's brothers come down, get food, go back, and you remember he sends them back with all the money in the bags along with the food. They're freaking out, thinking something's not good. They get back and show this to Dad, and Dad says, you're not taking Benjamin down to get food the next time, which is Joseph's youngest brother. Eventually, when they run out of food, finally they give in, and brother Benjamin gets to go with them. And this is where you come in chapter 45. The brothers are coming back into Joseph's presence to get food one more time with younger brother. As they're working out the food situation and discussing things, verse 1 says, then Joseph could not restrain himself anymore, basically, before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, make everyone go out of me, get out of me. So no one stood before him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. You could have heard a pin drop. As he's doing it, it says, then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Does my father still live? But his brothers could not answer, for they were dismayed in his presence. It's like, you're kidding. Now he's speaking in their language. It's just him and them. And he's having this disclosure. And Joseph said to his brothers, please come near me. And so they came near, and then he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Nobody else knows that except Joseph and the brothers. They'd never told anybody. They were afraid that if it got out, Dad would find out and they'd be in trouble. So no one has ever told anybody this secret all these years. And so they believe it. They're freaking out. But now, after they're realizing what's going on, Joseph says, "Do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves," you know how they've been, "because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life." You didn't do this. God did this. But they're connecting the dots all the way through. We're in trouble. We're in big trouble. We thought we had problems before because of the finances and the money being in the sack and all this other, and Joseph's cup being in one. It's like, this is Joseph. And they're playing back in their minds. I'm remembering the cries. Please don't do this. Don't send me off, until he faded off into the distance. A lot of them probably laughing at him, sticking their tongue out if that's what they did back then. We got you now. And all of them thinking, we're dead. It's interesting how Joseph looks at this. He'd been wondering all of these years, why? Brothers finally show up, and he grasps all that's going on. God's plan was in it all the way through. Joseph connected the dots of what God was doing, not just what the brothers were up to. That's a very difficult thing to do. After you've gone through the whole process, not to feel any anger, any bitterness or whatever, and say, God's still in charge. And He is in your life. He directs and guides and does things that sometimes come out bad, and a lot of times even you think somebody else is the cause of it, and yet God is still working through it all. Always has, always will. Don't give up on God. And that's the point we're seeing here, at least in part, by what's going on in Joseph's life. I'll leave you at this part. You can just imagine this as you go away here. But think about this. Because as the 11 brothers are headed back to tell Dad what really took place, I imagine the discussion going on is, what are we going to tell Dad now? Who is going to tell Dad the real story? And the first thing that Dad's going to do is connect all the dots and say, why didn't you tell me 20 years ago? And Joseph leaves that part to get straightened out with them. God's in charge. Plans us everything through. Sometimes it doesn't turn out good, but God works it out through the process. But He leaves us in charge to get things straightened out with our own lives. How's your life? How is your life? If you need to come